Okay, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Sherif Elfass, and I'm an associate professor at UNR. Satish regrets that he couldn't make it. This is my colleague, Dr. Petrone, and also our undergrad student, Alan Rivas. This project is primarily funded by the Department of Defense through ERDIC and CERN. So here is the outline. I have so many slides, so I'm going to go quickly. I'm going to talk about what do we have, equipment and facilities, how we started, and then how we deviated from the scope, looking at the component level as well as the system level, and also summary after that. So the idea, the project started with combining segmental construction with 3D printing, finding something that developed some guidelines for something like this that can be a beam. This is the framework that we developed for that, coming up with the shape, do finite element, reiterate, fabricate, test, and so on, and coming back. But we soon realized that you cannot just do that like that without some significant understanding from the modeling. So we went back to the component testing. We looked at looking for something like this, into something like that, into this later on. And obviously the interlayer bonding was something very important. I'm presenting about 15 months worth of work. We just got into this, so this is an ongoing work. We haven't even published any of this data yet. So what did we use? Equipment and facilities. The UNR has two labs, the earthquake lab and the large scale lab. The large scale lab houses our small printer. This is a 40-inch by 40-inch by 40-inch, 1,000 millimeter, 1,000 millimeter, and so on. We can print small items. We have for material testing, we have different load frames, as well as we have the structural frame that we can use the beam for testing. We soon realized, or quickly realized, that as the asteroid behavior, as for loading direction, if you printed a beam like that, the cast like this, 6 by 21 inches, this is the four-lobe bending, the four-point bending. If we tested like this, it's called the PY, or you tested the printing PZ, that means it's perpendicular to the printed layers, and we still realize that the PY is actually higher than the PZ. So that means there's different loading mechanism. We did this for the modes of rupture and the fracture energy to feed into our numerical model. Well, what is exactly our numerical modeling? We use LS-DYNA, and we paid attention to the contact failure. Let's call this the contact with failure. There are two different contact mechanisms. We chose that one because it works better. This is where you use the tensile, the tensile failure strength as well as the shear failure strength, combining or with combination of these two parameters. We couldn't find any. We didn't have any data at the point, so we used the literature, and we figured out that there are some values here from the literature. So we used those values. So we used, for example, the interlayer shear strength about 420 psi, as well as the spring tension to be to 55. Okay. So we use those, and now we start modeling. So this is again LS-DYNA. This is the four-point bending in that, and this is we did this for the sensitivity analysis. So we realize here that this is the PZ, and the PZ test, it has this concave strength, but the finite element was able to capture it, except capturing this sudden break. The finite element was saying that it's going to be something like that. We said, okay, this is the PY, and we said, well, how about if we can? So researchers always do what if and what we do. So we said, well, how can I modify it? So we increase the shear, the interlayer shear, and we soon realized that we can get that in there. Also, we said, well, let's do sensitivity analysis. Here is the PZ. This is from the test itself. I say, well, if we decrease the shear, it's going to be something like that. If we increase the shear, it's going to be something like that. So meaning that this 419 value, we really need to figure that out. We need to measure it somehow. Yeah? But with that, we said, let's go back to the coating. So let's look at the cylinders. So we collected cylinders from the nozzle itself. We did again the testing, the compression and the indirect tension, and we also created what's called the printed specimens, like everyone else. We did this printed specimens, and then we coat. So this is our coating mechanism. We call this the PZ, we call this the PY, and we call this the PX. So we collected those, like examples here. We trimmed them, we tested them, okay, and then we collected here's data. We have, so this is, that we call this sets, and we have about 5 sets now. We're just showing you, so each set is 3 of each direction, cast, PX, and PY, and PZ. And you can see here that this is the experiments. You say that the PX is, stops here. The PZ is a little bit lower, but the PZ has this concave kind of thing, performance, and the PY is a little bit, the PX is higher, the PY stops there, okay? So, this is the average, the summary. You'll see this is the cast, this is the PX, and the PX goes a little bit beyond the PY, but the PZ has this shape, and it goes like that. And so you'll see here, for example, if you look at all the statistical data, you see the PX is slightly higher than PY, and then the PZ. The difference is not that much, but at least you just recognize that there is actually a change in the performance. Okay? So now we went into the modeling, and we say, all right, let's make sure that we understand some definitions. So this is what we call this is the deposition layer. That means if you put this in the PX, that means it's printing this way. And this interface is going to be the adjacent layer. Okay? Both were modeled with using the same contact element and it is dynamic. And again, when you look at the PY, this becomes the adjacent layer, and that becomes the deposition layer. And for the PZ, that becomes the deposition layer, the horizontal, and this becomes the adjacent layers. Okay? So the deposition layer will be the interlayer bonding strand. Adjacent layer will be what's called the interstrip bonding strand. So far, we have not differentiated between them. We're just using the same value, which is 419. Okay? And then we soon realized that once you do enough of these, that the PZ is not really needed for this adjacent layer. It has no effect. So we went directly to this simplified models, because that's the deposition layer. It actually makes a big difference. Okay. Sorry. So here's the numerical modeling. Now this is compared with the NS Dyna. You see, for example, that we are matching with the cast, the PX, and the PY. But I should be careful here. I should be seeing why this is not running. Should be some videos here. Here we go. Let's try again. I should mention that here we go. That for the PY, we had to we didn't tweak any of the PX or any of the PZ, but when it comes to the PY, we had to tweak it a little bit. We had to apply for the interstrip shear to be 4 times the interlay bonding. Okay, and for that we're still working on it. But then, well, we said to say, well, what if? And what if we start to increase what exactly we're going to be doing? So if we have, so this is the PY, and we had to put like 4 taus here compared to the tau, which is the 419 for the interlayer bond strand. Okay, but then we said, how about if we go from 4 tau to all completely tied? There is no fiction. This is completely tied. So in a sense, it becomes the PX. And let's test that. So we increased it, and we see, for example, here's the PY tied. In fact, it matches the PX, because that becomes the PX exactly. Okay? So the model is working well. Okay? It's just these values that needs to be characterized. Okay? And then we also looked at, well, how about the PZ? If I can now increase the interlayer bond strength, what exactly is going to be the effect. This is the cast, and you see, for example, this is the experiment, okay? But if I reduced, I'm going to come here, this blue line, if I increase, becomes becomes here, and if I keep increasing it, comes there. And if I completely tied, it becomes exactly like the cast. So that means the model still the model is working well with the contact elements. I just need to figure out how much is the value for them. Okay, so we need to understand more about the parameters. Looking at the literature, we couldn't make the test that was in the literature. Our layers were about 10 millimeters. The nozzle is 25 millimeter. We have 10 millimeter as well as 15 millimeter layers. So we tested 10, 15, and we also tested 3-inch cylinders versus cores versus 4-inch cores. So we put in the geotechnical or the rock mechanics hat on us and said, okay, well, what can we do with shear? We did what's called the direct shear test. So there's an STM for the soil. This is the indirect shear mechanism. But this is for soil. This has a small load cell. So what we end up doing, we put a notch exactly at the layer interface with the layer width. So we end up with 1 inch square because our layer was 25 millimeter. Okay, and we put it there and we tested it, and you can see, for example, here is 1 inch square, and we did really test the shear, failure shear. With this kind of system, I can increase my normal stress. So we only did two specimens before coming here. So these are the 2 specimens, and you can see the average will be about 900, double what we've been using, the 490. Okay, we said, all right, this is good. We're limited here. We're trying to get into the rock mechanics side because they have a much bigger system. But then we tried something else. We said, all right, how about if I use my load frame here and I create what's called, this is something that very quickly. Again, I put a notch there, 1 inch square, and I load it in this way. The first test that we did, you see, this is kind of bending because the specimen was eccentricity, so it's actually bended, so that wasn't good. But we modified that, and then we end up with that exactly shear failure here. But that gave us this because we're going to test 2 specimens as well, and we are approaching. So this is the second specimen. We're approaching 1,000 psi. That one was a little bit bigger. Yeah. So definitely now we are realizing that it's not going to be the 419. It has to be something else. And look back at our specimen, especially for the PY, because the PY is the PZ, because the PZ is very critical or was very sensitive to the interlayer bonding strength. Then this is our finite element model. These are all our experiments, and if we increased with the 900 psi average here, I see that we are actually within the envelope. So this is the lower value of the envelope, and this is the upper value of the old experiments. If you plot all of them together, previously we've been doing average per group, and then we took that average, and that fit. But now here is the envelope, and this is all of the 5 sets that we tested so far. So this is the value that we're going to go back. Now quickly on the 2 minutes. Going to the modular system, because our printer is small. This is the design printing. We use Prusa from the 3D slicer, and then we generate the finite element modeling for this. This is the printer of what's called the T sections, and here is the assembly, and this is the test. Okay? And this is just a quick video of how to show what kind of assembly. We don't have any reinforcement there. We only have, after we assemble them, this green is just the rubber and the wood interface. We put rods and we manually tension those to apply an axial force, and that become as just one unit. So we tested 3 sections. We tested what's called the 78% infill, that kind of shape. We got the squat shape, 78% again infill, and this is the 55% infill. These are the tendons, okay, and then this is from the finite element models. These are the numbers. And we were limited only by the forces in the tendon. We could not exceed 6 kips because of the safety, because we create those manually. So we didn't want to, when we tested in the lab, they failed at 6 kips, so we didn't want to go beyond the 6 kips. This is, again, this is the front, the back. This is the load cells to measure the forces in the pressures. This is here, we tested the composite section between for the rubber and the wood. Just to show that the numerical modeling is actually capturing exactly what's going on with that. Failure, because of that, here is this. This is something that I want to mention. When we modeled the layers, everything is in there. However, we also modeled the monolithic, and there is no difference. Okay, so because everything stays linear, so it wasn't really any difference if you're going to model this interlayer in a system like that. I think I'm this is the other one again. The things here that we're still an ongoing. There's other testing techniques for the interlayer bond strength. The numerical models actually developed in parallel with the experimental efforts. This is the strong agreement. And here we're trying to develop models that will capture later on how, like without running all this sophisticated model. The element would take about 5 hours to run. The beam takes about 12 hours to run on LS Dyna. So we're trying to, well, come up with different models that you can see from key parameters. How can you assess this interlayer bond strength and so on? All right, with that, thank you. Here's a picture of the team, and thank you so much. If you have any questions.